Welcome to everyone for the spring workforce development meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And if you can call the roll, please.
Yes, sir. Okay, Mayor Barnett,
Present.
Marco Beal,
Present.
Bill Hightower.
Here.
Thank you, sir. Governor Brian Kemp. Representative Buddy Harden. Commissioner Candace Gross. Deputy Commissioner Kiana Good. Krista Biason.
Present.
Thank you, sir. Executive Director Chris Wells. Delkey.
Here.
Emily Davidson. Present. Thank you. Senator Frank Ginn.
Here.
Commissioner Greg Dozier.
Here.
Member Heath Clark.
Here.
Thank you. Dr. James Wilburn. Jay Cunningham.
Jay is present.
Thank you, sir. Kelly Brownlow.
Present.
Ken Warnock.
Present.
Thank you, sir. Kevin Jackson. Apologies. Chuck Newman.
Here.
Lisa Winton. Oh, thank you. Logan Leslie. Mary Fort.
Here.
Thank you. Margaret Conrad. Patricia Ross. Commissioner Patricia Ross. Here. Thank you. Randy Beal. Trey Taylor. Sam Dasher. Sam McCatchern.
Here.
Thank you. Chairman Countess.
Here.
Susan Andrews, Commissioner Andrews. Commissioner Andrews. And Teresa Fisher.
Here's fine.
I'm sorry, I just marked you as present. Mike Long.
I didn't sound like this.
We have quorum.
All right, thank you. So again, welcome to everyone to the spring meeting. I'd like to invite Stacy Weish and Wednesday Furman to provide a word of welcome from the Zoo Atlanta.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Wednesday. Welcome to Zoo Atlanta. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources here at Zoo Atlanta, responsible for all the hiring that we do. Currently, we are in our highest season of hiring. We do hire from the ages of 16 all the way up to 1,000 retirement ages for different sections in our facility. Our 16-year-olds, the 18-year-olds generally are in the functions of our admissions and our ride attendants. We currently employ education employees, interpreters, and examining employees. So right now, this is a very high season. We are very connected to the community as well, and Stacey will be presenting those items. We also have internship programs. Right now, we are paid, Stacey to go a little bit into that, but we are looking at connecting more with some of our schools that have animal vet career services at their school that we provide paid reactions. We are looking and connecting right now with Fort Valley schools for our eggs. apprenticeship program, which is our veterinary science program. And I'll turn it over to Stacey.
Thank you. All right, and thank y'all for being here today. Thank you for choosing Sioux Atlantic to host your meeting. We're really happy to have y'all. My name is Stacey White. I'm the Vice President of Education. And within our department, we oversee a very robust groupings of ways to advance STEM education, STEAM education, get kids involved, thinking not just about careers in sciences and careers in zoos, but also careers that might stand outside of the zoo as well. So we have pre-K through 12 programs that we lean into the sciences. We really look at the state standards, try to find opportunities to connect, making teaching a little bit easier for those teachers. We do outreach into schools. We also do community outreach, and that's a big part of what we've been doing for years. We've received grant funding. We also have it in our budget. It's really important to reach those kids that can't come to us and make sure that they understand too what those opportunities are to them. And so we've worked with Boys and Girls Club, Atlanta Housing Authority, YMCA's, Community Residential, Atlanta Parks and Rec. And so those have been really great partnerships to bring our educators out, bring our resources out, and let those kids also understand what's so important about STEM careers and how they can get involved. And as Wednesday noted too, we have our internship programs. Currently they're unpaid, but we would love to see that become a paid program, and we're working towards that. Those are focused on our animal areas, but we also have interns in our finance department, in our marketing teams, in our PR teams. And so we really take a look holistically across the zoo where we can create opportunities for our youth to grow and to gain those skill sets. Last thing I want to mention is our volunteer program. So we have a very robust volunteer program of about 700 individuals involved here at Sioux Atlantic volunteering their time. And of that are about 64 youth between the ages of 13 to 17. And they have the opportunity to go out and educate about the zoo. So they can stand in front of our exhibits and they can interact with our guests. They get to learn about veterinary careers, science careers. They're connecting with our staff. And so we're really, really proud of that program and bringing these youth in as well to learn a little bit more about the next step in their future. So I have some business cards I'm happy to leave behind as well if y'all have any questions about our programming and how we can connect further on bringing those kiddos. Yeah.
Just one quick question. Do you have any veteran programs that you, I was kind of directing back to the H.
We do.
Any kind of outreach to veterans to, go ahead. I was just saying any kind of outreach to veterans for job openings and whatnot.
So that's one of the things that we're looking at on our diversity committee, and how we can actually reach out to more veterans. We do see a lot of veterans in terms of volunteers, and some individuals in our horticulture and bamboo teams. So right now, there's not specific, like Wounded Warrior program or anything like that, but we are looking at that type of outreach.
We have worked with Department of Defense for individuals that are transitioning out and looking for that next career step. So we've had 1 or 2 individuals come through the program. Obviously, it's we're yes. So we're interested in growing that a little bit more as well.
Very good, thank you.
Question. Good questions for you. Enjoy Zoo Atlanta, and thank you again for hosting your meeting. Have a good day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, ladies. We appreciate that. So, as a first order of business, provide some staffing updates and changes. Danielle McLaughlin has joined the data and information team as a data analysis and reporting coordinator. Tyrese Eccles has joined the business services team as the apprenticeship partnerships and outreach manager. And Brittany Walsh has accepted a new position within TCSG's adult education. Actually, yesterday was her last working day in the Office of Workforce Development. So we wish everyone the best, and certainly Brittany will be missed. Also, we have 2 State Workforce Development Board members, Mary Fort and Heath Clark, who have been appointed to the Finance and Performance Committees. And Ken Warnock has been appointed to the Adult and Dislocated Worker Committee. So we appreciate your support and look forward to working with you. As we move into the business meeting for today, I think everyone received a copy of today's agenda and also the meeting minutes from the February 15th, 2024 meeting. Did everyone received a copy or?
Yep.
So having had the opportunity to read through those, are there any questions? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve today's agenda and the February 15th meeting minutes.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve the agenda meeting minutes.
Second.
Having had a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. Motion to approve the meeting minutes and the agenda has been approved. Moving into committee reports, we'll begin with the Youth Committee, and committee member Kelly Brownlow will share the past meeting.
Sure. Good morning. We did not have any policy action items in the Youth Committee this month. We did have a presentation from the United States Employment and Training Administration's priority for youth workforce development programs. Jennifer Houston discussed their priorities and their vision, which include a focus on equity, job quality, quality work experiences, apprenticeships, pre-apprenticeships, mental health, which is really great, and youth voice. They're hoping to, use these priorities and vision to guide states and local areas in enhancing their service delivery strategies, develop innovative approaches to serving youth, particularly those that are disconnected. And the ultimate goal is high quality career pathways that center around equity, job quality, and provide wraparound support services. We also had a local workforce development area spotlight, which was the Next Gen program director, Marjorie O'Connor from WorkSource Atlanta Regional, gave an overview of their youth program. They primarily serve out of school youth who are interested in employment and training and education. They have 3 primary youth providers: Hearts to Nourish Hope, Project Outsource Connects, and Cherokee Youth Works. They highlighted what they call their WEX program, Youth Work Experience, guides youth to career pathways in high demand industries with a focus on healthcare, IT, construction, and manufacturing. This program helps youth explore careers and gain their skills through in-class training. They do a lot of business field trips and job shadowing. Ultimate goal is permanent employment through the on-the-job training. And the program is designed based on the county they serve and the youth demographics in that particular county. So looking at dropout, disability, English language learners, and others. They talked about the youth roundtable discussions that will cover youth-related topics. And that's our meeting.
Any questions?
The mental health focus was really good, and I was glad to see that. That's a necessary thing for youth. So glad to see that coming from the federal level.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Lisa Winton?
Yes,
Yes.
go ahead.
Hey, I have a question for the WorkSource Georgia. So I don't know if this is appropriate time. You can table it if not. I have been talking to some teachers, educators, and there's a lot of students that are they're not U.S. citizens that are in our K through 12 education and are looking for additional training so that when they do leave, when they do graduate, they're exposed to a lot of these manufacturing facilities, a lot of these things, and they just need some basic training, whether it be forklift training or just like different types of training and the ability to access that training. Does anybody there know if that's available or if that's been discussed? Thank you.
For some of them, it's 18. Like for forklift training, you have to be 18. I'm pretty sure to actually do it. I'm sure there's a lot of this I'm sure there's a lot of this sort of stuff I just talked about. I don't know about the actual training if they're actually still in school.
And, Kelly, I can answer that. Sorry. Brandon on WD. Yes. So if they are a permanent resident and eligible to work, I know most high school students probably don't know the answer to that question. But if they have their green card or an eligible visa, they would be eligible to receive services under WIOA. And if that's, when that's the case, they would follow the similar process of working with their local workforce development area, and go through the eligibility process as a youth. Does that answer your question?
Now, I think it's that gray area that I'm unclear of because of, obviously if they have a green card or they have that sort of stuff, that there's a lot of things available to them. But our K through 12 education is required to educate them. So I'm just trying to figure out what happens when they're in these classes in high school and now it's time to graduate. Like, obviously we need them in jobs and they could have been here for a period of time. So I'm just trying to understand that gray area, and it could be a separate discussion I'm happy to have with whoever at a later time.
Yes, absolutely.
Lisa, I'm working on, this is Karen Hirschler, I'm working on a committee with the Department of Education CTAE folks. I'll get that question answered and we'll get back to you on that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, hearing none. Kelly, thank you for the update. We'll move next to the Adult and Dislocated Worker Committee, and Chairwoman Teresa Fisher will provide the update.
Good morning. I am just here to talk about the individual employment IEP, the individual employment plan. Excuse me. The IEP, first of all, is a recommendation, not a recommendation. It's a form that occurs when the individual comes into a local area to provide services, intensive and training services. The IEP is designed to drive services. So if an individual comes in and needs more intensive services, then the requirement is for the local area staff to ensure that it is, first of all, done in partnership with the individual. So there needs to be a signature and it needs to be included in every caseload every time. There also needs, the IEP is considered a living document and needs to be reviewed every 90 days. And it also, all activities on the IEP needs to be associated or linked to performance indicators. Those are the recommendations that are changing the IEP.
Any questions? Okay, the other action item that is also under the Adult and Dislocated Worker Committee is the Social Security number procedure, and Damon Weller will provide an update.
Good morning, everybody. The SSN procedure, all we're doing here is we're just updating the policy to reflect more recent USDOL guidance. They put out a guidance just recently, really kind of strengthening the whole SSN process of collection. The reason being is because there were many states that were bogging down eligibility, waiting for somebody to provide SSN, whereas they can move forward without receiving an SSN at that point. It's only to the point when they are enrolling them into some type of training or something that's going to give them a direct monetary type of benefit that an SSN must be collected for the WIOA. So at this point, all we did here is we were just updating the language. That way we reflected the most recent guidance, and also just to remind local workforce areas that they are to inform individuals when requesting an SSN that they are not required to provide it for eligibility, as well as to inform them of the security that is taken with the SSN. Obviously, with all the breaches around the country and everything, I think it's just USDOL's way of kind of saying, hey, just make sure you're keeping it safe and explaining to people that process. So that's all that policy is updating. It's not changing any procedure itself, just strengthening it.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, so somebody can show up without a Social Security number, get the process started, but before any funds are spent on that individual, the number has to be produced by then.
That's correct. For the Title I WIOA program, they must provide an SSN before the funds can be spent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any additional questions?
What's the status as far as somebody getting a social security? Do they have to be a citizen? They have to be, can they be here on a work visa? You know, I'm kind of worried about where this leads us to.
You know, I don't know if I can answer that right off. It's something I can definitely get back to you on. Certainly, we can provide services for those that have that SSN. With the right to work, we could serve them under Title III. With Title I and actually expending the funds, I think I'd have to look further into the law on that, unless you know offhand, Kristen.
You can get a social security number with a visa, with a work visa. And those individuals are eligible
With the visa, and they're authorized to be here in the country, but I'm worried about the ones that are not authorized to be here in the country. Because if they're eligible to get a social security number, then they're also eligible to get benefits. And to me, that would be an injustice in the legislative process. So, you know, I just look at it from, I would like to know, are we authorizing non-citizens that are not authorized to be in the country to get a social security number?
Not to my knowledge, I believe you have to have.
Right.
I could speak to that, Kristen, if y'all can hear me.
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
I said, this is Brittany. I can speak to that if y'all are able to hear me.
Yes, thank you, Brittany.
Yeah, so as part of the intake process that local areas do, even though we may be waiting for final documentation of the social security number, part of that intake process is also going to include a check for identity and work authorization. So to answer those concerns, no one would be put into any type of funded services without that check. And so what we'd be looking for again is identity, work authorization. Maybe we'd be waiting for some of those final documentation pieces to validate that. But again, as Damon said, those folks wouldn't be put into services until we can verify that. But that would be something that's checked at like the immediate intake of a local area with someone coming into the one stop.
Just to send it in, I think you got a point, simply because if your work visa runs out, and you've already got a social security number, is that a leak in the boat? If y'all understand what I'm saying. That could be an issue. If you've already been issued a social security number and your work visa expires, does that mean that your social security number is still valid? And you can still be expecting getting services? I mean, we maybe get into outside the realm of our purview here, but still, that's a great question.
If they have the SSN, the work visa would still need to be checked. So we would check that expiration date to determine whether or not the expiration date is passed, to be able to determine whether or not they retain an authorization to work in the U.S. So that would be part of that check to be able to determine whether or not they have that authorization.
I would also think it would be part of the IEP to look at the span of the services provided and the span of the length of the work visa to make sure that services wouldn't fall outside of that.
Right.
I think I'm looking even past that. Okay, so they're not looking for services, but we've given them a social security number. Maybe I'm getting into the mud, I guess, but I think then again got a great issue.
Right, unless I misunderstand as well, we don't actually issue any.
No. Okay, I understand, but if they've already got a social security number and their work visa expired and they're still in the country illegally, then but they've got a social security number.
Gotcha.
That's that may be outside the purview of this group. So
well, and one thing that doesn't come underneath this policy, but there is a data validation that has to occur. That USDO requires you to receive certain documents. So with the SSN, we would have to see the document that goes along with that for the staff to validate, the local workforce areas to have to validate that information to be able to say, yes, this is accepted. And then they have to put that there. And then at the state level, we actually come through yearly and they actually go through and validate the validation. So did the local area collect the documents necessary to support this specific data element? In this case, it would be SSN. We do date of birth, different barriers to employment, things of that nature. So the data validation would also be part of that process.
And obviously we can't speak to other programs and what that eligibility looks like, but since ours is often tied to the work authorization piece, that specific loophole wouldn't necessarily apply for other participants.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
There's been a motion made to approve both items can be voted on together. Second. Hearing a second, all those in favor of approving 3.3.1, the IEP, and 3.2.2, the social security number procedure, indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed by no? The motion passes. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the Finance and Performance Committee, and co-committee chairman, Dr. James Wilbur, will provide an update.
I do have Mark as present, Mr. Chairman. Yes. I didn't mark him as present. I don't believe he was able.
Mr. Chairman, we had a meeting, there were no action items taken. Did not have a quorum, but we never had a, talk about the audit process. Some findings, some areas, and talk about some recapture, but, no action items were taken, maybe they're down here. End of the day, the audits were done, and that was for 2022, 23, Kristen.
Yes, so the most previous program year,
Yeah.
2022.
That's right. And we also brought up that funds, instead of when you recapture, we can go over, so they can see that.
See that later.
Yeah, I don't have it on my notes, but it's not here. But at the end of the day, nothing was voted on, and it fell down the thing.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions? Hearing none, then we'll move on to the Apprenticeship Committee. Chairman Tobias.
It's on.
Morning. I wish I was there in person, but unfortunately we had a little staffing issue where I had a couple people taking vacations this week and I wasn't able to come out there. But we did have our committee meeting on May 6th. We did have all members present, so we had a full quorum. We did have the approval passed for our agenda and our meeting minutes. We did have one action item that we did a deep review on, and I'll get it presented here in a moment. It was to update the apprenticeship policy. We had reports by Adam Hawk, who is the Assistant Director of Apprenticeships, and Rosalind Dennis, our Apprenticeship Grants and Operation Manager, gave us updates to the HDCI program. This included the recent awards approved by the TCSG board and an update on recent program changes that Governor Kemp signed into law. Mr. Hawk also provided an update to the Apprenticeship for Economic Recovery grant. In this update, there's currently $3.7 million obligated in grants awards that are distributed to the 15 technical colleges to support projected 832 apprentices. Amy Carter, which is a special assistant to the president, and Donna Heyman, the apprenticeship specialist with Southern Regional Technical College, gave us an apprenticeship spotlight. I talked about how the Southern Regional Technical College partnered with Thomas County Emergency Services, and they created a fire medic apprenticeship program. Through that program, they had 11 apprentices. They're being cross-trained in both fire rescue and the emergency medical services, or EMS. These apprentices are paid as full-time employees from day one and receive an increase in pay once the 15-month program is completed. Those apprentices were also featured at the South Georgia Healthcare Summit that was hosted by the WorkSource Southern Georgia and WorkSource Southwest Georgia. And then lastly, Tyrese Eccles, the Apprenticeship Partnership and Outreach Coordinator, our newest addition to the apprenticeship side, talked about the upcoming apprenticeship programs that are coming up for all of the network across the state. The apprenticeship coordinators are having a collaboration training in June of 2024, where they're going to network the best practices that they're accomplishing in their areas. And then in September, there's going to be an apprenticeship coordinator webinar that tailors training needs for the different apprenticeship coordinators with the different TCSG campuses and apprenticeships. And then in November 2024, in conjunction with the National Apprenticeship Week, there will be an event to celebrate the program's successes throughout the year. And this event will include the partners, employers, and the stakeholders. So now I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, Brandon, who's going to give the update for our action item that we have for the apprenticeship policy update 3.4.1.7.
Thank you, Chris, and good to be with everyone this morning. The action item before you is 3.4.1.7, registered apprenticeship programs. This policy rescinds and replaces the existing policy that we have in the state policy manual, the WorkSource Georgia Policy Manual. Just to provide a little bit of background on this policy, its development was spurred on by two main factors. One, feedback that we received from local workforce development boards around how they can support registered apprenticeship programs. And then two, updates to the existing federal regulations and guidance around registered apprenticeship programs and how they can be supported with WIOA. The other thing that I would also note is that this policy has not been updated since WIOA was adopted in the state of Georgia in roughly 2016, 2017. So there have been significant changes that we would like to make as we are better informed of how these programs are implemented across the state with WIOA as a support. The policy itself aligns our state policy with other work-based learning policies that you'll see in the policies in the policy manual. So it's aligned with on-the-job training policy, customized training policy, incumbent worker training policy, et cetera. And then the policy itself establishes kind of the state level registered apprenticeship definition, which is very consistent with the federal definition. And it also adds new requirements on program elements, funding mechanisms, contract elements, eligibility, pre-award processes and considerations, reporting, and monitoring requirements. And then lastly, with this policy, we also incorporated some job quality elements that we've been working on with the U.S. Department of Labor. So you'll see here a big emphasis on making sure that these registered apprenticeship programs are sustainable for individuals and families, as well as they have strong job security once that individual actually leaves that registered apprenticeship program. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve 3.4.1.7 registered apprenticeship program?
Motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by aye.
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 Any opposed by no? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that concludes our report.
Thank you, Chris. Moving on into the executive committee, there are two action items, PY24 and FY25, WIOA Title I budget, and then also first year funding recapture rate. And Kristen will take us through both of these.
Yes, sir. Thank you. That budget is very small. Apologies. You do have it in your folders.
Still.
It's still a bit small.
Anybody have 2.5s? I got it.
Pass this around. If you have your electronic device with you, it was also in the Dropbox link provided by Nia, who we can zoom in on a couple of those. I will go through it though. Apologies. So we received our federal final allocations a little over a week ago. We did get cut, but we were excited by how small the cut was. The last 4 to 5 years, we've received between an 8 to 9% cut in all three funding allocations. This year, adult and youth were under 1%, and then dislocated worker was just over 4%. So good year for the state of Georgia. That is going to total for us about $57 million that we'll be bringing in for just WIOA Title I funding. What's in front of you is our yearly allocations. So again, adult, youth, dislocated worker, and rapid response, with the addition of the apprenticeship funding, because that is now a yearly allocation as well. It is not encompassing the Title III funds, which is not the direct purview of this board or this budget. And it also does not account for some of the specialized grants that we take in from other places, both federal and state. It is not an action item because we are recommending the same rapid response set aside as we have in years past, which is 5%. So won't be changing from last year. Again, we can take all the way up to a 25% set aside, but we try to keep this set aside as low as possible because the local areas get the remainder of what that is in dislocated worker dollars. We probably will not be able to keep it as low as 5% next year and year after because we are starting to clear out some of the reserves that we have. Again, everything except for apprenticeship funding, we keep on for 3 years. So we have some second and third year funding that we're able to fill in with the rapid response set aside. So again, that's part of the budget. The amount that you're looking at is really the total. So when you're looking at your spreadsheet, keep a look at the total. The other amounts going out from that are our allocation and how we have to set up our budgets. So for every expense we have to have an admin portion of that, a program portion of that, adult youth dislocated worker portion of that. For rapid response and apprenticeship funding, we do direct charges. For the adult youth and dislocated worker, almost everything left on that is cost allocated. And we do that based on a cost allocation plan that's based on actual participants in the system. So the one for this budget is based on last year's. We won't have the numbers to complete this year's budget until the end of June when the participant figures are final for the year. However, it remains the same. There's not going to be any large shift that throws us out of budgetary compliance for any one of these funding sets. And again, it doesn't change the total. So the first set of funding, and again, the code beside it is our codes for OPB so that we're able to load budgets and the governor's office is able to see. So that's what those percentages are. It doesn't necessarily affect the federal budget side. So we have salaries broken out between the 3 programs that are direct charges. This is encompassing a 3% raise that was included in the governor's budget and passed by the legislature. Next section, we go into travel and supplies. Next section is IT costs and also PeopleSoft. PeopleSoft is the state accounting enterprise system that will be changing in the next year. Rent and utilities are in the next section. Again, this is just the rent for system office, since this is not the Title III budget. This won't include the rent for the career centers, one-stops, and those types of things. Cell phones are in the next section. And then the next very large section are our contracts. Most of the items within here, if you have a specific question, I'm happy to answer what that contract is for. But most of these are data, case management, other types of IT contracts that we have to keep for ourselves statewide, and some that we provide to the local areas for data purposes. The next section are our subawards, mainly one to the Georgia Department of Labor for their assistance in carrying out rapid response activities. We also give each of the local areas a rapid response allocation, again, for assistance when layoffs happen in their regions. And then finally, we have the sector partnership grants, which we're asking to allocate $1 million to for the final year that we'll be running those. Any specific questions about the budget? Yes, sir.
When you start off by saying it's less than a cut, how much has it? What would you think it would look like from 2001 or 2021, 2022 budget?
When the grant was at the
normalization.
Right. When the grant was at the Georgia Department of Economic Development, I remember the last year we were there, it was like 97 million that we brought in. This year is a $57 million budget, so it's pretty substantial. I think what we've been able to do, just from the state perspective, is going after a lot of discretionary grants. We've really been able to kind of buffer that through national dislocated worker grants. We're able to bring those in. Local areas can use that for dislocated worker funding and things that are a little expanded outside of that. And then with the change from WIA to WIOA, USDOL allows local areas to transfer a good bit of money. It says 100%. You can't necessarily allow that from dislocated worker to adult. So they're moving a lot of their dislocated worker funds to adult funds, using it there. And then when we bring in the National Dislocated Worker grants, they're using that for a lot of their dislocated worker activities. Also in years past, we have had a very small budget at the state level. And so we've been able to take that excess in second and third year funds and give it out locally in additional funds requests. We're still doing that, but obviously as we go on and get more cuts year after year, our ability to do that is going to decrease.
And Lord, I think just what's important with this, and I may be wrong here, Christy, correct me. I think in the last 4 years, it's gone from right at 70 million down to this 55 million. Is that right? 79 million or so.
4 years, yes, sir.
And most of that's tied to the main driver of funding for any state is their unemployment rate. So we've had groups in this group working on how would we recommend if the Fed would change that distribution methodology, how would we prefer that it be so that it's not driven so much on one factor. But that's really what's driving the cuts is the unemployment rate. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. And
yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, it's the whole Southeast region that has taken cuts like that.
The problem is that there's 1,000 unemployed people, but 2,000 people move in here, the rate goes down, but it don't mean those 1,000 people got jobs.
That's right.
The way it's calculated, the total pipe with more people coming in, so the rates automatically going down, but it doesn't mean they're unemployed, getting jobs, even getting trained, but we're getting cut, which only screws us up in that. Yeah, the demand is still there, but they give me less money to fill the demand.
Thank you. The second action item is to waive funding recapture for first year. Again, we get grants for 3 years. The local area allocations they get for 2. There is a rule that says that local areas have to spend or obligate 80% of their first year funding unless the state board waives that need for recapture. We typically recommend waiving that recapture. We get funding, our youth funds in April, a small pot of adult and dislocated worker funds and by proxy rapid response funds we get in July. And then the majority of the rest of that funding comes in October. And it's always late. We still don't have our April youth funds. And so local areas really do have to carry over more than 20% of that funding just to be able to float and do business during that time. We work with fiscal agents of a lot of different sizes. Again, they're always regional commissions, county governments, city governments, but the size of those governments vary greatly. If it's a smaller city or a smaller county or even sometimes smaller regional commission, floating a budget like that is just not something that they can do. Also, we have for several years now not had any problem spending federal funds. I think we returned less than $100 last year total as a state. So we don't see it as an issue. And again, are recommending that we waive first year recapture. That's my report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So again, on both of these 2 action items, we can vote on those together. Entertain motions. Approved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving FY24, FY25 WIO title fund budget and first year funding recapture waiver, indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. So the next item under the executive committee is a update on the sanctions.
Yes, sir. And we're just reporting out about an executive committee action. We're not going to ask the full board for a vote. But due to the lack of a functioning one-stop and the inability to accept federal funds or serve participants, OWD issued and the exec committee approved a level 3 sanction. We've never issued this level of sanction before. And it does require the executive committee to approve that, which they did. So that's going to do three things. The vote was to decertify the Area 13 board, select the CSRA Regional Commission as the fiscal agent, and effectively merge the service delivery areas of Area 12 and 13 together. If you're thinking about a map, this is kind of dividing Augusta into two and the map around there. Since Area 12 was not part of that sanction, they have to meet to formally ratify and accept the merger. And they will be doing that after a adequate public commentary period. We'll probably provide additional updates and other reports, but that's where we are right now.
Any questions?
I have a question, Heath Clark. Will this affect the budget that we just voted on, like in any way, merging the two? Will it reduce costs, or is it going to incur new costs to that budget?
That's a great question. So the budget that I just produced is our state office budget that is based on the governor's set aside. So the 57 million that I talked about, 15% of that remains up with us, and that is just our system office budget. The remainder of those funds go out to local areas in the form of allocations. And so the allocations for Area 12 and 13 for this next year would obviously be combined, which we'll be working with our data shops to ensure that we have the data figures behind that to run that new allocation. But no, sir, it doesn't affect our budget. It will obviously affect the local budget quite substantially. And we're hoping to see additional financial efficiencies. That was another part of this is, you know, obviously we've seen a great deal of cuts to funding. Last year we had the voluntary mergers of Area 10 and 11 due to the need for some funding efficiencies in that region. I believe that that's been successful in that region. We're hopeful that that's the case in this as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
Can I comment on that?
Yes, sir.
I was gonna wait at the end, but, the senator just said that's in your backyard, which I'm very aware of. I've been involved, I've heard from, you know, that office, people that when I was the mayor of Washington, I was on that board. I was the one that pushed years ago to get it from the regional commission because that rural part of Georgia didn't feel like it was getting served. And that's when we had Easter Sunday money coming in, so it was okay. And we fought for it, and we felt like that was the right thing to do. And the rural part of that area got served. Hancock County's in it, one of the poorest areas of the state. So the rural areas struggle the most because even though unemployment goes down, the factors aren't moving to those areas. So I was the one in that. I'm also the one who made the motion that it goes back to the regional commission. And, you know, it's not popular. Some people disagree with it, but I do understand it. And a couple things through that. We do know that everything goes up. Labor's going up, everything's going up, and all our monies are coming down. So at some point in time, this area and other areas will have to consolidate because overhead has to be able to service more people than what they could serve to reduce costs for the benefit of Georgians. So even if there were no politics and personalities involved in this whole thing, I still think business-wise, it was the right thing to do. Even though some people may lose their jobs in the regional commission, I mean, some of the areas, at the end of the day, very talented people can find opportunities to do other things, but we got to stretch a dollar as far as it to go to serve the Georgians that need training. The other thing is personalities and politics and all that stuff got this train to leave the station, and it got way too far down the tracks before it could be stopped. And it's really sad it got there. And my encouragement is, if you're on this phone, if you're in a local area, understand what you get appointed to, understand your role in those boards, and don't let the train leave the station. Because some of them, the train's way down the track before they even realize what they're appointed to or what's going on. And that's the sad part about it, and Georgians lost out. And then local areas must hold the regional commission accountable to make sure they service them, and the regional commission must make sure they service those people, and they ought to be able to service more people because overhead should be able to service those people and more dollars can go out. And look, it's not popular, it may be right or wrong, but at the end of the day, I have felt like I have an obligation, we have to do what's best for the Georgians. That this budget that we're approving serves those Georgians that needs training. And ain't protect anybody else. And, look, I did it, my phone's been ringing both ways, and I know it, but at the end of the day, we gotta be able to walk down the sidewalk, look those Georgians in the eye, and say, we did what's right for you, so you can get trained, and you have opportunities to get trained. So, you know, you'll hear different things going on and out about it, and, but that's the way it is about that. And Mr. Chairman, I was gonna wait till the end, but I've been on this committee since 2014. We've been through the good, from when a bunch of them left, we got transferred over here to where we are now. There was funds going back to the federal government that you didn't spend going back, that was stopped. You know, great job to the staff for what y'all done, and it's been great to work with you. But y'all will be resigning from the board, but I didn't want to. I have got appointed to some other stuff. I wasn't going to resign from this board and think, well, that's a complicated vote in Ames's backyard, he resigned. You know? And I also don't want to say, well, Ames made a tough vote in his backyard, then he leaves. You know, I did stay around and make this vote because I believe it's the right thing to do for those people in my backyard. But after that, and this thing's done, when Ms. Karen and them think the water's settled and the smoke's clear, you know, we'll be stepping down. And I wanted to come today to face to thank everybody for what y'all done. Thank y'all for what y'all doing, and I'm always here to help. And I didn't want to just send a letter in the mail, but it's been an opportunity to serve. Governor Deal put me on here, and but I really appreciate it, and it's been an honor. And end of the day, sometimes what we do is not popular, and sometimes folks don't think it's right. But we put here to do what's right for Georgians. And that's what I see it. But thank you for allowing me to serve, and it's been great working with y'all. And hey, man, you were working together when we had to find a physical agent. We taught Lincoln County into Strathman to be the physical agent. So
Yes, sir.
we really know too much about this whole thing. But so I've been down this whole road. I can just commit to you, I believe we made the right decision. If anybody wants to call and ask you any different, you know, you're here, you can come and ask me. I can tell you why I thought we made the right decision.
Thank you.
A great job to you all for going through the sanctions and what y'all had to do to get it where it is. End of the day, it's sad to even out there.
Thank you, sir.
But budget cuts for real, and they're coming. So, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your comments and certainly your service over the number of years on this board. But you're correct 100%. It's all about serving the Georgians. We take care of that. We do have on the schedule for a 10-minute break. Unless somebody wants to go forward with that, then I would suggest that we just continue. And that being said, we'll turn it over to Mr. Herschel.
Good morning. I appreciate your comments, Mr. Barnett, very much. Thank you for your support. I'm not going to take a lot of time this morning because we have a presentation from Mark Beatty, and I want to allow him to have sufficient time for you all to ask questions of him. But I did want to kind of touch on that we continue to grow, as you know, with the transition of Wagner Pizer coming over to TCSG. We're figuring out what's the actual right size, what's our footprint need to look like. We onboarded about 30 individuals since our last meeting. That's a pretty significant number. We currently have, or will soon have, at least another 15 openings, and potentially more. Some of those represent, we've seen a number of retirements and individuals transitioning out to other opportunities. And also we're identifying additional needs within the division and so forth. That said, we're working really hard to kind of build the culture. We want to ensure that we have a lot of really positive customer service out in the field, and that our team is well trained and well equipped to serve the public and well represent this agency and kind of carry forth our mission. We're also working really hard to align all of our resources within the agency. We have a lot of opportunity to leverage funding and resources and so forth as we move forward. And we'll be sharing more of that with you as we go forward. Briefly, to Mr. Barnett's point about service on the board, we really appreciate everyone's board engagement with the board. We realize this is a volunteer opportunity. But as you can see, it's important work, it's impactful work. And so we just ask that for your continued engagement and participation with us as we move forward. Because I think that as you've seen, the word workforce is kind of a key word these days. And the work that you're doing is going to continue to be important and highlighted. Some of that is evidence with the work that we're doing with the Governor's Workforce Strategy team. I'm, really excited that we're heavily engaged with that. And Mark's going to talk to you a little bit about what some of that work looks like and how it may touch the work that we're doing with the State Workforce Board. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Mark Peavy, who is this isn't working?
While Mark's coming up, Mr. Chairman, and Karen, if I could just say a few words. Karen and Mark, thank you for what y'all been doing for kind of the globalness of workforce and how it really brings, I think one of the things that we have said as a group, we really want to see the interconnectivity of the Board of Workforce Development with so many other aspects. And I believe today, Mark's kind of brings some of that web of where we're really interconnecting everything. The other thing I'd like to say is, James, thank you for your service. You were here long before I came as commissioner, and from day one, you've been a leader on this board, and thank you for being a leader on this board. And I'd also like to echo that while I know the executive committee's decision was difficult, I do appreciate all the hard work of Karen and the team and the executive committee's consideration and patience and opportunity, because that went on for quite some time. And I appreciate the service to Georgia as being the focal point. So thank you, Mark, and I'll hand it back over to you.
Yes, sir. I won't belabor the time, but echo the thanks for what you guys do, and just start this off by saying I'm about to put some more work on your plate. I say I'm about to tell you about the work that the legislature put on your plate. So, thank you. Really, the legislature and the governor's office in particular, the governor picked this up. So we're really just a few minutes. We'll just talk about this high demand career initiative update and a specific bill that passed this year. Just a high level overview of where this is headed. But House Bill 982 this year was one of the governor's legislative priorities. It came kind of bubbled up from specifically the work that both our Office of Workforce Development have done and this board has approved in terms of the apprenticeships. So if you remember when the apprenticeship bill piece was passed probably about 3 or 4 years ago now, it spoke directly to a high demand career list that the entities that wanted to take part in these apprenticeships needed to have their particular jobs listed on. As that played itself out, it became apparent that, and most of you who have been in this workforce development world for a while know that high demand career list has been used an infinite number of times. There's probably 5 or 6 or 7 different lists that folks in the past have pointed at. Hope Career Grant list, that's other lists. And so when specifically around the apprenticeship program, when folks begin to ask the question, how do I know if my industry is on that list? How do I know if we're eligible for these apprenticeships? That really forced the point to say that list is not codified anywhere. There's nowhere to point to in state code. There's no particular entity who kind of maintains that from a state level. And to be able to say this is where the state puts its focus on in terms of an official list, and more importantly, as the discussion of high demand career lists has bubbled around the state over the last number of years, how do we review that? How do we know what is on there? How do we know what's not on there? How do we know what should be on it? And what is the process for doing that? And that conversation intrigued the governor, intrigued his staff. And as part of that, we landed with House Bill 982, which plops that responsibility down on you folks. But in all honesty, it's really where through all those conversations, and I'm going to emphasize the governor's staff and the governor's office for a number of different reasons. We really wanted to focus the main place where that was captured here with the State Workforce Board. And so it is an additional set of responsibilities and additional tasks for the board, but it's also an opportunity to what I believe we'll see is much more executive engagement. So I expect that this will lead to the governor being much more directly involved in this particular piece, because this will intentionally set some priorities for the state for what do we officially recognize as those high demand careers around the state. And that's at a very high level. That's what this bill was about. And it places those responsibilities here on the State Workforce Board. As you guys continue to work with our Office of Workforce Development, where the support effort will come from. But as this moves forward, an official high demand career list, you'll be asked to, as staff works with you to develop one of those, asked to approve that. And that will then in the future become the focal point from the state's perspective on everybody's got one place to look, one place to recognize the priorities of the state. There's some leeway within the language of the bill to have a statewide list, but also have some regional additions to it. I'll put it that way. I won't say exceptions, but regional additions based on what's going on around the state in different parts. And so that's also a piece of it that was important as this moved through the legislature, that folks recognize that there will be some, certainly in specific regional areas, some lists that are jobs and some industries that need to be important that may not be all over the state on a statewide list, but we can capture those too. So that's the high level piece of where this is going. I know, Karen, we're going to talk through a couple different pieces. And Karen already mentioned the governor's workforce strategy team, who happens to be meeting today, actually. If we weren't here, that's where I'd be. I'd be at their meeting. But it is a team of a number of state agencies, Governor's Office of Student Achievement, university system, obviously us as a technical college system, a number of different other agencies that are all part of that, to really begin to take a look at how does the governor develop workforce strategy moving forward, and what does that look like as the state moves ahead. And so that's what that team is doing. And clearly, the creation and the updating and development of a high demand career list that this board will now do under this new bill will be a key integral part of that. And so that group is already working from a data collection standpoint and they'll be putting together some recommendations that I think will help you as a board and help our workforce development team be able to get to the place where you're ready to produce that list the way that it'll need to be. And so that'll be a critical part of the partnership at the statewide level. Karen, as Karen and I were talking about this yesterday, with a couple of things we wanted to talk about. So one of the pieces also that strategy team and where the governor wants to go is, obviously you folks are very familiar with the WIOA plans that we put together. There's also a Perkins plan. If you don't know what that is, that's the plan for federal Perkins dollars that helps support technical education across the state, both on the K-12 side of the house and with TCST on our side of the house. And so this strategy team and what the governor's office wants to do is begin to weave those together in a single plan, so that workforce development, federal dollars we get to spend on technical education that will hopefully develop the right workforce all end up working more cohesively together in the future. And so that'll be a part of the work that goes on. I think there's a lot of potential impact here, but really at a high level, and I don't want to belabor the point, but I think the high level here is this is an opportunity to really bring a focal point for the state's workforce development efforts by recognizing these are high demand careers, and through these pieces like the WIOA Perkins plan being combined, this is how we're going to begin to line up and purposely focus state dollars, federal dollars that come here to Georgia in the same direction, and get everybody kind of pulling that wagon in the same direction together to do those things. So I think that's the biggest potential impact. Process and implementation timeframe, the bill calls, and if you want to read through it, you're more than welcome to, but I didn't want to bore you with that today. But the bill, I think it kicks in July 1st. It calls for an establishment of an initial list And that's a piece that I'm sure from a process standpoint, the workforce strategy team is already beginning to think through some ideas that they'd like to recommend to where to start. But then I think we'll look at is a process that this board will put in place with staff to have an initial list. But then by I think it calls for end of December, mid-December, I forget the actual date, but December, to be able to, and on an ongoing basis, review that list and publish and or update a list on a yearly basis as we move forward to make sure that the state continues to have the right priorities in place and that list is not infinite, that if you're on it once, you're always on it. Well, that's not really where today's workforce is or where industry stays at any one given time. And so that's really what that process and implementation piece will happen. So again, as we move forward throughout the rest of the year, that'll be a piece that'll get developed and the board will have those kinds of responsibilities moving forward. The last piece I'll mention there is as we talk to the governor's office, and again, this is a piece that they picked up. We understood that this board would need some support in being able to help move through those functions. And so there was some outside of the legislation, there were some dollars put in TCSG's budget to bring on a particular staff role that will help focus and really move this work forward. And so there'll be a specific focal point for doing that. That role will be an integral part of the governor's workforce strategy team and really help develop the process and put it in place and be the voice for you folks as a board as this whole effort moves forward. And so that's a high level where this is going. Happy to answer questions. Commissioner, if there's anything you think I missed, please feel free to jump in. But I think it's an exciting opportunity. I think it represents a more direct role that the governor wants to play in regards to this board. And obviously the workforce development is part of his specific strategy moving forward. So I think that's really exciting actually, because it'll give us all a chance to get on that same page. So Commissioner, if you got anything else?
I think the only thing I would add is, to me, it's exciting for this board to kind of be the central point for this. I think it will, just so this board understands, I think in our internal discussions, there will be some initial still overlap and what are these lists and how do they play in, i.e., the one that we think of the most at TCSG is the 18 high demand career fields for the Hope Career. It is intentional, as it's written right now, that they may or may not line up exactly with this. We'll have to figure out where that goes, but it's intentional that we don't want to hurt one list over another initially. And so as we navigate this as a workforce board and navigate what the real structure and goals are, it may cause some of you around the table go, well, how does this affect that? And I don't know that we have the full answers at this point, that we'll figure it out together, but it was intentional to make sure that initially we're able to have a regional approach as well as a global approach and not unintentionally affect other things such as the Hope Career Grant. And so hopefully over time they'll all start lining together. That's obviously, in my opinion, one of the goals, but I don't want this board to initially get concerned and caught up with as we start. At some point, we'll have to have an initial list presented before this board just to get going. But that doesn't mean that's where it'll end as we do the work that Mark talked about as a group. But I'm excited about it. I think it's a perfect location for the responsibility as this board, because it is such a global critical as far as the workforce board across the state. So thank you. I thought you did a great job, Mark. Thank you.
Any other questions you guys?
I do. My role at the TCSG board makes me ask this question. So as this work, these jobs are developed, can't speak for the university system, but is TCSG ready to align programs that's gonna bring these things to fruition? If that makes sense what I'm saying. I mean, if we say, okay, we've got now every month that we meet, we either take away a program that's not effective or we put one in. Are we ready as a staff to move those forward as they come up?
Yeah, Mike, I think I'll answer it this way, and I don't mean to answer it. I don't think this will sound arrogant, but that's my concern. I think we already do that. So I think that has been the greatness in my 4 years of learning the effectiveness of TCSG, because it's kind of what this agency is known for, is the reason you guys approve and vote out programs is because we adjust to industry needs and desires, and I believe this will just enhance that. So obviously, if there becomes a point where we're not meeting that need, part of this board, and that's why you and Chunk and others are on here, is to make sure we're not missing that at TCSG. But I do believe we're prepared for it, to answer your question specifically.
Mr. Manning. I just wanted to add that while the Hope Career Grant is really tied to the work that TCSG does, this list will also drive how and influence how funding can be utilized at the local areas by third-party providers who are not necessarily TCSG entities, but could be funded by the local area for a program that aligns with an occupation on that list. Does that make sense?
And I think that's.
There's a lot of opportunity, and I think the timing of how the list ideally, if we have the list coming out in December, if we see a gap in programming to address an occupation, right, it gives us a little bit of runway gearing up to the next academic year to get programs into place as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Karen. I would mention that, and I'm not going to speak for the governor's office. That's certainly not the governor himself, but in terms of thought process here, that is really what it's about. There's lots of different entities across the state that all clearly do workforce development and technical programming, whether it be on the K-12 side or what we do or USG does, or even what the local workforce boards are doing. And so part of the strategy piece, and the reason the governor's put that strategy team together and was very happy to move this bill forward, is we really don't have that aligned at the state level. We have some nominal alignment, but across all of those different players, there's really been no direct focal point in terms of this is what the state recognizes. And I suspect somewhere down the road, there'll be an opportunity to incentivize as we think about all the various dollars that get spent on workforce development, technical education, whether it be Perkins dollars on the K-12 side or our side, or WIOA dollars as they're spread around. The idea is to begin to use this as a tool that aligns all of those over time. And again, that's where the specific combined plan for WIOA Perkins piece comes along, is that we all begin to do that. And as the state moves forward, we're all headed in the same direction with all of those various dollars and how we implement them, and recognize that this list and this board's ability to be able to keep that list updated and maintained over time allows the state to continue to be focused on the things that are important as industry shifts, as new things come to the state, as perhaps old things phase themselves out. All of that is about aligning as we move forward. So, Mr. Chairman, that's all I had. I'm happy to answer any other questions if anybody's got them, but just we're really excited about where this fits in. I know that the governor's team is very excited about how this board plugs into the strategy team piece and how this moves forward.
I would add as a kind of a closing piece of this, and the commissioner and I long had this conversation. The environment, the opportunities within the state are changing at a very rapid pace. And there's great things about that. At least as I see it, as one of the warriors within the state of Georgia. But it's aligning those people to where those opportunities are, making sure they're aware of where they are and what they can do. So personally, I'm glad to see that there is going to create some alignment and how we're going to work together and push things forward in a very fast way, hopefully to continue to give people opportunity. And that's central in what this board does, at least in my opinion.
Sure. Thank you. I'll be around if anybody's got other questions.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is performance reporting update. Damon will provide that for us.
Good morning again. First off, let me just apologize in advance. If I'm dabbing my eyes, it's because I have allergies. It's not because the data's bad. And here we are at the zoo, so so just wanted to kind of give the board a quick overview of what is our performance. What is it that we're measured against? And so just 101. So adults and dislocated workers, you can see that we have the 5 measures there. Q2 employment rate, that simply means after we're done working with somebody, it goes 90 days out, and then it comes back to an exit date Second quarter after exit is after that, we're done working with them. Are those persons employed? Q4, same concept. Once we're done working with the person, are they employed 4 quarters after we're done? Credential attainment rate, obviously that's pretty self-explanatory. Median earnings in Q2 just simply means what was the person making in the second quarter after we were done working with them. And the measurable skills gains is the only one that's real-time measure. That is, we're measuring as that person is working with us, are they achieving certain steps toward some type of outcome, whether that be a training outcome or employment outcome or what have you. Youth, very much the same thing, except for Q2 and Q4. It's not just looking to see are they employed, but are they in training? So we get that extra allowance to say they may not be employed, but they've gone into training. And obviously for youth, that's a key piece. Everything else stays the same. And then Wagner-Pfizer, they use the same thing. So it's what we call common measures. The Q2, Q4, and median earnings are what we call common measures. So this is the adults portion. As you know, we have adults, dislocated worker, youth, and then the Wagner-Pfizer. And so you can see here. Now, I want to point out to you, this is PY22. And you may say, Damon, why are we talking about PY22 that ended June of 2023? That is because the federal government does not provide us any of our other data and other states' data until somewhere around February, March, or April of the following year. So I apologize that we're a month and a half away from finishing out PY23 to now bringing PY22, but that's the reason for this. So as you look here, we've got the different measures that we talked about. You can see where our actuals are. The number next to the actual, that is where we rank in the full 54 states and territories that are reported to the U.S. government. So you can see there where we rank. Now, one thing I do want to point out, when we talk about those rankings are based upon the nation's total reported states and territories. But it does not mean that we're 11th upon everybody when maybe somebody's only served 600 people. So I had to write these down because there's a lot of data swimming in my head, and sometimes they don't stay in the right lane. So I put it on paper. So for adults, PY22, we serve 5,214. If you go to Alaska, the median earnings, 11,914. Wow, they did great. They served 667. That's against our 5,000. So to get that in perspective, I went back and I looked at anybody that was at our service level or above. And so if you look at the Q2 employment, we were 11th overall. We were 7th when you put it against other like numbers. Just going down that list of rankings there, we were 7th in Q4 employment. So again, you can see how we're bumping up. Q2 median earnings, we were 5th. Credential, we were 4th. So you can see how far up that bumps. And then measurable skill gains, we go from 34th to 9th. So I just want to kind of get that in perspective because I think that we're respectable in our rankings, but our rankings actually are a little bit better than what they may actually present here. And then when you go to the region level even looks better. In some cases, the earnings were 2nd in the region. Again, that may not be with the same service levels. The negotiated goal, you can see what we negotiated with the feds there for PY22, the percent of goal. You can see down at the bottom, overall program performance for adults was 113%. To give you an idea, they look at it at per program, which is the adult program, 90%, that the state needs to be at that. So that way we avoid any kind of sanctions or anything of that nature. So you can see we're well above that 90% per measure, which is the 5 different ones pointed out here. You have to be at 50%. You can see we're at over 100% on adult across the board. Dislocated workers, I won't go through everything again because it's the same concepts. But again, I just want to give you an idea of how our rankings change when you go to the likes. So that first one, we were at 12th, and we're at 3rd when you take only those states that were serving the number of dislocated workers that we did or above. Q4, we go from 10th to 3rd. Earnings, we go from 14th to 6th. Credential, we go from 28th to 13th. And the measurable skill gains, we go from 38th to 14th. And again, in the region, just to point out one, Q4 employment, we're actually the number 1 in the region of everybody. And again, let me give you service numbers here. So Georgia for PY22 served 1,227. And let's give you an example here. Vermont right at the top, they serve 31. So you can see why they might have 100% because they have a little bit more of a chance to get 31 people employed. We've got 1,227 that we're working with. And even to give you an idea on that, we were 21st in the nation in the number of participants. Number one there was New York. They had 124,000. So we got a little bit of work to do before we're going to get 124,000. But you know what? I will say this. That's dislocated workers. I'd rather not be at the top of that list. I'd like to be at the top of the list of the performance, which I think we're getting there. But let's not go there for participants because that means we're doing something right in our economy. So when we go to the youth, again, same concepts. But again, let me give you a participant level, 4,342 served in Georgia. Give you an idea, North Dakota there. In the median earnings, they served 192. A stark difference. We were 10th in the number of participants in youth across the whole nation. And again, you can see the percent of goals well above where we should, where they ask us to be, keeps us out of any kind of sanction discussions or what have you. This is just a slide to show the characteristics of the Title I. So just Title I to be able to kind of give you an idea. I think this is also in your package as well, so that way you can kind of dive in a little bit deeper. But these are the kind of metrics that we'll be looking at to be able to see, are there service strategies we need to put in place in Title I to be able to work with our local areas, to be able to address certain things. And then we've got a heat map at the bottom to show where a lot of those participants come from, the darker green obviously being the larger concentration. This is the barriers to employment. So you can see where are we serving Title I with barriers to employment. So you can see the basic literacy skills deficiency is by far the highest barrier that we're serving. But then we've given you some ideas of some of the other ones. Again, just to kind of keep the board informed of who are we seeing? Who are these individuals that we're coming in that we talk about and policies that we're putting together? So we wanted to make sure that we're putting this back in front of you for your information as well. So then we looked at what is the top industries for the WIOA participants that are coming through and then gaining employment. Where are they going into employment? So you can see here the top 10 of where are those individuals gaining employment. And then next to it is the top occupations. So you're going to see obviously a little bit of overlap there with number 2 and 3 occupations going to the number 1 in the industries and what have you. But again, good information that we felt the board would appreciate to be able to know where are these outcomes coming from. The wage trends, this goes from before they start with us to after they've received our services. We are required to track before they came to us, what were the wages that they were earning versus once they have left the program, what are their wages and their earnings. The blue line are anybody that received training. That's what we call ITA, individual training accounts. So that's anybody that received training. You can see the stark difference there of the where it's low there, and then it just spikes. And that is, the spike is what our local areas are doing. So I can, every time I get up to the ability to put my voice heard, I always say the local areas are the driver here. I just get the honor of being able to report what they do. That is a very, very stark difference from where they started to where that participant ended. So I think that's a great illustration of what is the local area doing. And then the orange line are for those that did not receive training, just received some type of career service when they were coming through any of our services. Again, this is for Title I participants, so our WIOA. Here's our return on investment. So we tried to annualize some of the data that we saw. So the estimated annual earnings for all those individuals that you saw change their wage trend was about 162 million. Our allocation for PY22 is around 64 million. The net return being 98 million. So again, you're seeing the benefits of what our local areas are doing and what we're asking you to vote on when we're setting policies and what have you. You can see the impact. And that's one of the key pieces that anytime we try to do data presentations, we want you to be able to see the impact that we're having. The PY23 to date. So I mentioned that we're just now finished on PY23. I apologize right now because we're only through 2 quarters because we just reported the 3rd quarter yesterday. So I don't have the updated information on this slide. but we're doing pretty well. The yellows mean that we're kind of borderline. We got a little bit of work to do. The red down here in the bottom right is a measurable skills gain. And as I mentioned, that's a real-time measure. Because it's a real-time measure, it's going to be low right now because we're just now getting to the point where people are about to graduate, which means they're going to get their measurable skills gains. They're going to get their diplomas, their degrees, their high school degrees, diplomas. All of those different pieces are going to fit right into this. So yes, you see the red. I do not anticipate that we're going to fall below where we need to be there as we move forward through the PY23 period.
Damon,
Yes,
I should know, but I don't. You look at measurable skills, is that both non-credit and credit? Does it matter?
Does not
I
matter.
assumed it did.
Right, it's literally a skill gain, so it could be in a credit program or a non-credit program. Yeah,
It would
absolutely.
be a TABE game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we also wanted to provide to you the information because we just, because of the two reds over here, we're actually still in a negotiation period for PY24 and PY25 expected outcomes. The reason why those two are red is because USDOL came back with a little bit higher than what we felt they should. So we've gone back to them and asked them, and we're hoping for a response to be able to give us our PY25 outcomes. So we've got a little bit of work to do because the credential and the measurable skills gains are ones that we need to have some focus on, and that's what we're going to be working with the local workforce areas. I don't feel like we're in danger of going below that 90% or 50% per measure, much less the 90% per program. But those are ones that I never want to come up here and just say everything's hunky-dory. Yeah, we've got some work. There is some work to do. And I think Commissioner Dozier might even say, we want to be number one anyway. So even though we may be number 4, let's move up to number 1. So just wanted to provide this again, so that way you could see where things kind of stood as we move forward in PY24 and 25. Our state plan, we have provided our expected goal in 24-25. USDOL came back and said, we accept some of those. We accept some of those and other ones that they wanted to accept negotiation for, but we're down to just these 2 that we're hoping to be able to get that finished up at any moment. So the statewide then for Wagner Pfizer, so that the Title III program, again, just wanted to give the same kind of information for them, just so we know we served in participations. That's only participations. And I did not put up here what they call reportable individuals that are receiving other services. But in participations, we had 96,286 in the Wagner Pfizer program. That puts us 6th in the nation. So we're pretty high up there. Texas was number 1 with 281,000. In the region, we are by far the number 1. So in our Southeast region, we have more participants in Wagner Pfizer than any other state. Again, give you an idea of when we talk about likes, right? Like, as I mentioned, we're number 6. So if we're talking about the same number of people served or above, that 29th goes to 4th in the nation. So yes, we're 29th, but that's including a lot of people, Guam, that might have 3 people they're serving or whatever the case may be. We go from 29th to 4th. On the Q4 employment, we go from 27th to 5th. And then on median earnings, we go from 30th to 5th. So again, gives you a kind of an idea. It's that way we're trying to do some kind of apple to apple comparison because you look at 30 and say, oh, we got a lot of work to do. We do have work to do, but not as much as that might present. And again, here you can see that the percent of goal, we're meeting everything. Our overall program performance is 111% of goal. So we're well on our way to being able to go through the different pieces. The one thing I wanted to mention as well, another reason that they present us the data so far after the program ends is because they adjust the performance goal based upon the barriers to employment, the individuals that you're seeing with barriers to employment. So in other words, if we negotiated at 80%, they wait until the program year ends, they evaluate all of our data, and then they may come back and say, your 80% goal now becomes 76% goal because you saw more harder to serve individuals, which means it's a little bit harder to get those persons back to work. So USDOL uses a regression model, an adjustment model that then allows us to be able to adjust that negotiated goal down based upon the people that we serve. So that's what we're working with local workforce areas on as well, to put out their statistics in front of them and say, hey, you know, you're going to help yourself and the state by serving more homeless, by serving more veterans, by serving more ages, you know, 45 through 64, those kind of things. Those type of things will help to lower the expectation that USDO has from us at the end. And again, for Title III, wanted to just provide a slide of who are we serving through Title III. So you'll be able to kind of look at that again in your package. You can see in the age group there, the 25 to 44 is by far the predominant group that's being served on an age. And then we put the barriers down there. Long-term unemployed. You kind of expect that in Wagner-Pfizer, because a lot of those individuals are ones that are receiving unemployment because part of their unemployment is they're required to co-enroll in Title III programs. And they are required to do that. If they don't do that, they will stop their benefits and they're not allowed to receive any more benefits. So you kind of expect that long-term unemployment would be the highest barrier to employment there. On the other side of Title III is the labor exchange, right? So we work with job seekers, but we also work with employers. So we wanted to provide some information about what is that employer information. So last year in PY22, we had a unique number of 2,841 employers that had a job posting, at least one posting. And then you can see there, what are the industries of those employers that had the postings with us. And then to the right, the top occupations. And we had over 351,000 job orders posted with Title III last year in PY22. And again, there's the top occupations of what those individuals were posting for. And then just a quick combine to be able to show Title I and Title III together. This is minus any youth information. So again, you can see we were at over 100% or more, with the exception of credential attainment right there added, to be able to give an idea of that. So with that, I'll open the floor with any questions you may have.
I have a question.
Sure.
I saw Mississippi, I'm not used to seeing Mississippi like place number one. Like, is that because they have a bad economy? Like, what? How come they were number one so many times?
You know, I can't fully say, but I will say that they actually did have, they had consistent numbers with us. So we were at 5,900 adults. They were at 6,213. So they were actually pretty close, but their outcomes were really well. So, you know, one thing that we do is we do share a lot of information. So I'll probably be reaching out to Mississippi saying, what programs have you put in place to be able to get those people employed so easily? So.
I just think they were told Greg an interesting thing. There was more 60 plus served than there was 44 to 60. That's an interesting number.
Yeah.
60 plus.
Yeah, and actually, Karen and I just spoke about that group yesterday because that group is one of the higher ones to be served, and actually they have one of the lower outcomes. You can kind of see why, but that's going to be a goal. That's going to be a focus to say, okay, well, what can we do to maybe provide more workshops with that group, that particular group, to be able to assist them in getting reemployed.
Thank you. Save me one in something. Save me number one in something.
Yeah.
All right, so the next item on our agenda is the virtual kiosk vote, and JJ will take this.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So this is just a quick presentation on the kiosk that we will be implementing. What it is, it's utilizing WebEx. So they have a Desktop Pro, and this is what it looks like. And so basically what we do on the ES side, we're going to create several meetings. We're going to implement this first, I believe, in Milledgeville is where we're starting out. And once we schedule those meetings, it's going to create a join button on the screen. And then basically a customer can simply come up to the screen. They select the join. You got to swipe up. Yeah. And then you select join. And once you select join, I can also, so go ahead and click join so they see it. I can share my screens. And then you see it there. And of course, the staff would have their cameras on and whatnot. So you have that more in-person feel when you're working remotely. You know, right now we do a lot of phone, but sometimes when you're working with a customer, it's easier if you can see each other. And then also share the screen. So I can share the screen and walk them through their WorkSource Georgia account. and help them with their registration, their resume, all of those good things. So it's a quick and easy way to connect with customers virtually. Whereas right now, you know, if I wanted to create a WebEx meet, I'd have to send it to them. They'd have to go to the actual link. This way it's already done for them.
And again, the focus again, as Ron is saying, is to have that interpersonal connection that we've all seen how things have changed since COVID. Not everybody can get to a career center, as we know in some of the rural areas. Not everybody can get to, you know, a particular location. They may not have the technology available to them. Unfortunately, we still don't have Wi-Fi availability to every single person. So we're going to strategically, again, after testing it, we got some locations that are identified, looking in certain local workforce areas where, okay, we may have coverage here because of a career center or how the affiliates are located, but where we're not, then we can position these accordingly. And we can put these in multiple locations where it doesn't necessarily mean it's at a career center or at a comprehensive one-stop. This could be maybe in this particular county or region, the library is the #1 location for everybody to go. It's sort of government building because there's DFACs or other entities there. We're like, hey, we'd like to put this there because we have mutual customers going to do that. And then so our team, our ES team, wherever they may be located in the state, when they're not helping someone in person at the moment, they are going on the contact center. So they put their headphones on and they're available to take an incoming call at any time. But then we're going to shift. So we'll have so many people who are dealing with the phone, so many people who will be assigned to this specifically. So as Rhonda would have been that person, she's doing other tasks, but then all of a sudden I came up and I touched this, and now all of a sudden she sees me and I see her, and like, what can I help you with? And then be able to provide service. And as she said, sharing the screen, we know that a lot of common things is I need job search assistance. I need assistance with just trying to register in the system. What are some of the training opportunities? I don't know. And maybe I'm all thumbs. I can't navigate my phone. She's sharing her screen. I can see what she's doing. Or even when we go through the application process, that we can turn around and show them what it is we're asking of them, and we're just answering it for them. And then be able to complete those processes in a much simpler, much clean, efficient way. But then we're already looking at the next step. Of course, we have our veterans team, Jobs for Veterans State Grant folks. So if we do come across a veteran, one of the things we do instantly when we know that person meets a certain barrier to employment or they meet a certain population that they should be served by a DVOP, we can then send a DVOP, which will have a DVOP or two that are there. They know on that given day that they're there for that availability. We'll shoot them a link, said we got a veteran that you can serve. And then they're like, give it to me. They get the link, they come on to the same, because everybody, I would think most people are familiar with WebEx. Then once they come on, if they need to speak with something in private, we can put them in a breakout room. Put them in a breakout session and let them talk if they don't want me to be a part of it. And then we'll let them finish. And then whenever they're done, we'll just release that individual. And again, the hopes is that this is going to help identify areas, because maybe we put one in there, we're like, oh, we don't expect too many people. But if it's a line, one after the other, then that might make us rethink, well, maybe we should be putting an ES staff member in that particular area. So we're very, very excited about the potential for where this can go.
JJ, what's the DVOP?
A Disabled Veteran Outreach Program Specialist. So the Jobs for Veterans State Grant, we have certain individuals who can provide that more intensive or individualized career service to a certain veteran population. Those meet barriers, and I don't want to get too much in that because we just had a new VPL that came out, which is going to expand the number of veterans that our JVSG team can serve.
My area is heavy with all the Fort Stewart.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. And again, with that Fort Stewart, Hinesville area right now, I will admit there's a little bit of a gap, with the even prior to the transition. So hopefully, and that could be something that could potential. We know there's enough activity somewhere, but we just haven't found where we can put a DVOP or an ES person there. It could be we might go to Fort Stewart. We might say to the TAP folks or to the Soldier for Life folks and say, do you have a space where we put this? And that way we do it. And then we wouldn't just be touching our veterans. We can touch our transitioning service members. We can touch our spouses and their dependents that are in that area or located on that base.
Will we be making this available just to someone who has their laptop at home and can do the same thing?
I think you're already going where we hope that this is going to teach us a lot about how we can serve, because we've already thought about that. Would that happen to be, again, as I use COVID as an example, you couldn't go to the doctor's office, but then they started having the video appointments, right? You start saying, hey, the doc needs to try, well, let me look and say, well, hey, can I do this? What's your symptoms? And you have that meeting. So there is that potential, sir.
Greg, you made a great point, Commissioner, because that is exactly why I was going to have a staffing issue then. But then you get everybody to be a fantastic way to go online and say, jump right in.
But that would be a good worry for us to expand our staff and utilize our resources if we find that out. Yes. And I know that we are up against the clock, so if there's any other questions. Yes, Brett?
Yeah, Judge, quick question. In terms of the local areas, is it a software that you'd be able to put like on a mobile unit as well in the future, or does it have to have a certain equipment?
I think it's not, this is actually just a Cisco WebEx unit. It's an all-inclusive monitor. So as long as it has that and has WebEx there, we would be able to put that on when as long as you've got good Wi-Fi connection. As you guys see, we're here in an area that this is not where we're normally located. We're using the Zoo Atlanta Wi-Fi.
No, we're actually hardwired.
Oh, excuse me.
I mean, just I will kind of throw this out. I have learned through using these with IT at TCSG, hardwired is ideal. But if you've got a good Wi-Fi, you should be okay. But ideally, you want to go hardwired from a router, switch, what have you, into the actual unit.
Maybe the mobile unit is a billionaire. As a
Our mobile hotspots would handle the bandwidth.
And I know somebody had a question in the chat about a UI customer. If somebody came in for unemployment insurance, how would we refer them? Those are things that we're also working on with Georgia Department of Labor on how they would like us to refer individuals over and get those processes worked out. So to the individual in the chat, we're kind of still working out some of those pieces.
How many of these are rolling out?
Originally, once we finish that first, we're about to go into testing phase, then we'll have 7, and we'll strategically put 7, and of course, we hope to purchase some more.
The intention is to expand, but we want to make sure we're good at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The team trained, the right people behind the screen, all of that. So
absolutely. We're excited. So hopefully in a couple more meetings down the road, we'll be able to give you some more information updates on it. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner, any closing comments? Thank you. Any good? So again, thank you for everyone's participation. Certainly has been, as it's already been highlighted, some difficult decisions, but I think we all agree that we're here to work for Georgians and promote services to help them be successful. So we do appreciate the service. The next meeting will be on Thursday, August 15th. The location is to be determined, so we'll share that as soon as that is done. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yes, sir. Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor, indicate by aye.
That's not easy.
Aye.
All right, thanks.
We're adjourned. Thank you.